It is back to school on Monday for the country's youngsters. The cost of lost schooling as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating, leaving gaps in the education system. To help us unpack the stats and understand the large-scale impact this pandemic has had on our learning programs, Muriel Mafico joins us now. She's Deputy Representative for Unicef South Africa. Muriel, thank you and good evening to you. So as the President is about to address the nation at 8:30 p.m., we heard yesterday from the Minister of Basic Education. It seems to be up in the air somewhat, this question of whether or not primary school pupils are to return to full-time learning as of Monday. What's your thinking as UNICEF about what's at stake here?
Thank you very much, Thula, for this opportunity. There is a lot at stake as we are contemplating the reopening of in-person learning since the closures that happened last year in March. There's a lot at stake. The first issue to note is what you've already mentioned. We have lost almost a year of learning. That is a long time, and the implications are huge because we are also talking of the foundational years for these children. It's important to get the foundation right for future learning outcomes. So a lot has been lost. But beyond the learning losses, we have missed on opportunities for other school-based services. And these are particularly critical for the marginalized children. So when we reflect on the impact of school closures, this has really had a devastating impact, particularly on the marginalized children and the ones that were already lagging behind. So the costs are high, the implications are high.
And specifically when you're saying, when you're talking about missing out on other school-based opportunities, here you're talking about such initiatives as the school nutrition program, for example. Much talk has happened during the pandemic of keeping it going. Is it your reading and your experience that this has not translated to actual action that impacts pupils' lives?
Thula, when you look at what has been happening, we've been having rotational learning. We've been having remote learning, in some cases blended learning. So as long as children are not going to school every day, during the school calendar year, it means that they are missing out on a number of school-based services. Yes, we are talking of the nutrition or the food, the school feeding program, which actually reaches almost 10 million children. And for children from poor backgrounds, this actually constitutes a significant loss because it is the main meal that these children depend upon. And we know that the school feeding programs actually contribute to learning outcomes. The other aspect has to do with the protective environment, which is so critical for children and their mental well-being. Actually, the full cost, the full impact of COVID and on mental well-being is yet to be looked into. So there are huge opportunities that have been missed, school health programs, as well as the interaction. Yeah. Education is about interaction. So that interaction has been disrupted in the last 16 months.
As if that was not complicated enough, Muriel, this whole situation around COVID and the disruption to the schooling calendar. South Africa being South Africa, when we disagree politically, when we have civil unrest and strife, one of the things that are targeted are the schools that our children go to. Talk to me about that aspect, particularly in the wake of the events of the last 2 weeks. How deep does that make the crater from this impact?
I think when we look at the impact of the vandalism in schools that happened in the last 2 weeks, we need to contextualize this. Even before COVID, the education system was going through challenges in terms of disparities in the quality of education, in terms of limited infrastructure in some of the areas, especially rural areas, townships, informal settings. So when we have any vandalism, any looting that happens and it impacts on schools, it sets everyone back, it sets children back. So our call as always in this context, is that as parents, as communities, let us protect the schools, because these are really meant to ensure that we give each and every child in South Africa the best start in life.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. Muriel Mafico, who is the Deputy Representative for Unicef in South Africa, weighing in ahead of that speech, of course, by President Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll find out if they plan to reopen schools tomorrow and also to have primary school pupils returning to face-to-face learning will still go ahead.